This is a paid advertisement for legal services sponsored by attorney Andrew Van Arsdale.
Hello, my name is Andrew Van Arsdale, and I'm here today with Gayle. Gill, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Gill, you become something of a spokesperson for men and women who were sexually abused as minors in the care of institutions. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got here?
My parents separated. My mother put me into scouting at the time, and I was in scouting a very short amount of time, a couple of weeks before there was a camp out, and my scout master sexually assaulted me in his tent. And for me, that went on for a number of years. My parents reunited, and when I was around 13, we moved to a different town. And my dad put me into scouting. At this point, was still terrified. I never told anyone what happened to me. And he put me into scouting. I was in that scout troop for a couple of weeks. There was a scouting event. That scoutmaster picked me up at my house, gave myself, another scout that was in the car, drugs and alcohol. I woke up being sexually assaulted by that man in his bed. I spent years trying to get some sort of justice. I was dealing with statute of limitations and things. One of those men died. And the other man, due to the statute of limitations, I could never get him to court. He ended up reoffending. He is now a convicted sex offender. That started me looking at sort of the Boy Scouts in general. And then we found out that the Boy Scouts, as an institution, had been keeping this list of pedophiles that were operating in scouting. There was a disclosure, and the Scouts had to give this list, they call the perversion files, of every scout, everyone associated in scouting that had sexually assaulted a child. Between 65 and 85, there was about 7,800 pedophiles operating inside the Boy Scouts. They would politely ask them to leave scouting. And what most of them did is they would just go to a different town, they would join scouting, they would continue to assault children. So when I found out that at the institutional level, there was an issue, that what happened to me and thousands of other men could have been avoided.
They knew and they could have done something about it.
And they chose not to. It caused thousands, tens of thousands of us, by their own admission, to be sexually assaulted. There was a story in LA Times a few months ago. There was a guy who was first identified in the early 70s. The BSA found out that he'd sexually assaulted a child, a scout. And they removed him from scouting.
Didn't report it.
No, didn't report it. No
Just
reporting.
said, hey,
just like,
quit.
So he moved about 40 miles away and became scoutmaster again. Now, in 1984, he finally went to prison for sexually assaulting a number of children. He admitted to over 100, okay? Over 100. Only a couple of those people reported him. And you got like 98 people like me that were terrified children, or embarrassed or ashamed, or for whatever reason just didn't have the capacity to come forward. So what are the real numbers here?
We've noticed not only the Boy Scouts, but other institutions like the Catholic Church, the LDS Church.
The Boy Scouts, I'm involved in that currently. There's 85,000 men that have come forward. We know that's a fraction of the men that were assaulted. As a society, we've held all these institutions at a higher place, above reproach sometimes. These people are in charge of our social and spiritual and physical welfare, and it's setting these standards for us to achieve more with our lives because of our associations with these very institutes. We're expecting for our lives to improve, not to be crushed. Both of these other institutions have been more committed to protecting their reputations at the expense of the very people they're supposed to be helping. Therefore, these bad actors can continuously do this. They can continuously prey on children and not pay really any consequences.
We've studied it. Pedophiles need to go where they have opportunities.
That's right.
And the thing that the pedophiles most fear is being caught, being arrested, being charged criminally, being locked up. And they go to these institutions that have this aura of authority and they know they can go in there. They know they can get access to innocent victims, and they can take advantage of that trust.
Their position allows them to isolate children with impunity, with no question. It's all about getting in a position where you can isolate victims. The only way we're going to stop this that I can see is we're going to have to all come forward. We have to find the courage to come forward and to hold them accountable. Is when you get to 85,000 men coming forward, you realize you've got an institutional problem. Right. See, when I was first assaulted, until I was almost 40 years old, I didn't know there was an institutional problem. I thought I was the most unluckiest child in the world. I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought there was some reason I was weak and I was preyed upon or whatever, you know? It took me years of therapy and a couple of suicide attempts and you know, self-medicating in my youth and all kinds of things to try to deal with it. And I've somehow survived it. The awakening for me one day was to realize that the Boy Scouts knew they had this problem. They actively recruited children into an unsafe environment. The only way we're going to stop other children from getting victimized in the future is if we come forward and hold them accountable now.
Too late for them to seek justice. No more. Statute of limitations prohibited organizations like the Catholic and Mormon churches, public and private school systems, Boy Scouts, and other youth organizations from being held accountable. No more. New laws have been passed which allow victims of childhood sexual abuse that had once been denied justice to finally bring their suffering to light and say no more. If you were sexually abused as a child, the institutions that allowed it to happen can and should be held responsible. No more suffering in silence. No more cover-ups. No more abuse. Period. Come forward and stand with others who suffered as you did, and together, let's say no more. Call us today for a free confidential consultation. We're helping abuse survivors across the country say no more. Let us help you too.
Now that you have come forward, right? You buried this as a child, you dealt with it in therapy.
Yep.
You finally found a way to come forward. What's that feeling like, and what should people expect that are sitting there and thinking about coming forward and not really sure? There's a lot of downside, right? They got to face these demons that they've lived with their entire lives, and that's hard. But what is the upside of doing it?
The only way healing is through it. When I started being victimized and sexually assaulted, my life, in a weird way, became about protecting that secret and holding that poison inside of me, and it was eating me alive.
And why do you think that was?
I was embarrassed. I was scared of being mocked by my peers. I know all this sounds stupid, but realize I'm processing this as an 11 or 12-year-old. I didn't want to look at that because it was so painful. I knew if I didn't tell someone it was going to kill me, and I went and there were two friends of mine, and I went and told them what happened to me. And the second that happened, I started getting better. It's a slow process, it is. Now for me, part of this process is trying to go forward and help other people. And the only way I can help you is to encourage you to find the strength to come forward, to hold these institutions accountable. Was it difficult to go through what I've gone through, to deal with what I've done, and have the days I've had, and talk about those things, and report them to the police, and to talk to detectives and district attorneys and all the things I did to try to hold people accountable? Those days were very difficult. Was it worth it? Absolutely. And I have great empathy for everyone who suffered at the hands of the Catholic Church, the LDS Church, or Penn State. We even talked about that thing.
The YMCA, a youth sports league. I mean, you name it. The same thing that you're talking about. People put in position of authority, taking advantage of that trust and preying on children. It's just not right. And when you talk about holding an institution accountable, I mean, we're talking about using the civil justice system and putting pressure on them to do better. To one, make you whole for what you went through, to say, listen, no more abuse. You can't afford it, You need to put in better means of protecting children, otherwise you will not have a future. The only way to hold these organizations accountable is money damages. So it's one, future child protection, making sure it doesn't happen to the children of tomorrow.
If the penalties are severe enough, I believe they will change their behavior.
That's what we're able to do by coming forward and stepping up. You can say, you know what, you did this to me. You owe me for what happened.
Yeah.
My life took a horrible turn, and it didn't have to. If you would not have been negligent, if you would have done what you were supposed to do, my life would be different today. And that's what these money damages are.
Hold them accountable. I know what happened to you. I know what that level of pain is.
I know this has to be one of the hardest decisions you've ever made, and I'm sure it is for anybody that takes that step. The good news is, though, we do work on a contingency fee. And that simply means you don't actually have to pay us any money. We work our tails off for a long time in the hopes that we hold this institution accountable. The only way we get paid is if we recover money damages for what you went through.
That's right.
You never owe us a penny out of pocket. We're gonna do everything in our power to hold this institution accountable.
And I'm telling you, you come forward and you join with others and you find people and you bond together and you have each other's backs. And there's this deep understanding with this desire to see change.
If you knew someone was out there and they were abused through an institution, be it the Catholic Church or another religious institution, what would you tell them right now?
I'll talk directly to you if you're out there. You'll be heard, you'll be understood, and you'll start to have some recognition, and you'll start to to build your life one block at a time. But it's going to start with that phone call. Get yourself an attorney. Don't go to these people by yourself. They're well strategized against you. You need to tell people exactly what happened to you. You need to get help if you can. If you can afford therapy now, or talk to your attorneys and let them know what your needs are. In whatever way you're suffering, you need to let that be known. My personal experience, there's healing on the other side of that phone call. It's slow, and it's going to take a minute. But you're going to feel stronger, you're going to feel better, you're going to start to fight back.
Too late for them to seek justice. No more. Statute of limitations prohibited organizations like the Catholic and Mormon churches, public and private school systems, Boy Scouts, and other youth organizations from being held accountable. No more. New laws have been passed which allow victims of childhood sexual abuse that had once been denied justice to finally bring their suffering to light and say no more. If you were sexually abused as a child, the institutions that allowed it to happen can and should be held responsible. No more suffering in silence. No more cover-ups. No more abuse. Period. Come forward and stand with others who suffered as you did, and together, let's say no more. Call us today for a free confidential consultation. We're helping abuse survivors across the country say no more. Let us help you too.